Facebook friends. Helen Archontou here, CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. Happy Thursday. If you're in New Jersey, we're happy that the sun is finally shining and hopefully a rain-free day, although we know we need the rain. But the storms have been a little crazy, which does remind us that global warming is a real thing. But anyway, we are here, as you know, on Thursdays for those of you that are regulars of YWTV. This is the day that we share the mic now with Black women in our community to elevate their voices. And I'm so excited to have with me today Nikita Stewart and to talk about a wonderful book, that she's put out and, just a little bit about her life experience. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to share a little bit about her before we get started. So let's see. She is the author of Troop 6000, the Girl Scout troop that began in a shelter and inspired the world. And she's also a journalist at the New York Times. In 2020, the Newswomen's Club of New York honored Nikita with the Ida B. Wells Award for exceptional coverage of communities of color. The organization recognized her work covering homelessness, mental health, and poverty in 2018. She was a contributor to the groundbreaking 1619 Project, writing an essay about how slavery is taught in American schools and sharing the story of her paternal great-grandfather who was enslaved as a boy. She has also won several other awards and previously worked at the Washington Post, where she helped chronicle the inauguration of President Barack Obama and uncovered campaign fraud in a mayoral election. Earlier at the Star-Ledger in New Jersey, she also followed up on an up-and-coming Cory Booker at the time and other politicians in the Newark area. She says that she found her true calling covering social services at the New York Times. Welcome, Nikita. So happy to have you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, what a career and so many amazing experiences, already to date. I don't even know where to start, which one to ask about first, but maybe let's start with, and I love asking this question today because last night we launched at the YWCA our second round of our Your Story writing workshop that we host for women in our community to help them find their voices. And so it makes me think about you and your voice and what started you to get inspired to write.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that actually goes back to elementary school in Killeen, Texas. That's where I grew up mostly. And my brother had a paper route. And my family, they were always big newspaper subscribers. And so the papers would be delivered to us each morning at about 5 a.m. This was back in the day when there were no plastic bags. If your paper got wet, it got wet. But we did fold them and put rubber bands on them. And so my brother enlisted me to help. He wasn't paying me, so I just decided that I would spend more time reading the newspapers instead of doing my job. And I was just very interested, very fascinated in the news and how quickly, I would read about a meeting that happened the previous night, and there it was right there. I could read about it that morning. Of course, that seems really silly now that we have instantaneous news. But then, there was a career day when I was in middle school. Someone from the local paper came, she talked. I was like, that sounds like an awesome job. I'm doing that. And that set me on my path.
Wow. Oh, I love, for our viewers, right before we started, I said to Nikita, I'd love to have you come talk to our Girls Leadership Academy to, help inspire the young women, because we don't get a lot of writers who end up, in print media the way that, your career really, has been, and authors of books to come speak to the girls. And there you go. I guess that sounds like it had a little bit to do with how you were inspired as well by meeting someone, through a similar kind of experience.
Oh, yes, for sure. And the other thing that helped me were programs. I was in the Dow Jones newspaper minority journalism workshop by the time I was in high school. The paper, the Courier Journal, gave me a scholarship to attend a camp at Northwestern. Where I still have some friends from that camp today. And they've actually helped me in my career. And so, if there are any young people watching, I'm like, sure that you are respectful and of your peers, because you never know when they're going to come back into your life.
That is great advice. And, we definitely try to impress that upon them, that you just, I know I always say, my mother always says to me, be nice to everyone because you just never know, but, from a career perspective, for sure, as well. That's great advice. So, your projects are so, I want to ask about every one of them, but I guess, I'll start with your book, since I know that's kind of one of your current focuses. And for our viewers, we're going to drop the link to the book in the comments so that you can get a glimpse of it and decide if you want to grab a copy after we talk a little bit. So tell us about the book.
Yeah, when most of my career, I covered politics and campaigns and campaign fraud, and I was an investigative reporter. And when I got to the Times, I was covering City Hall, but I was also kind of parachuting into national stories. And one of those national stories was the tragic killing of Freddie Gray in Baltimore. And while I was in Baltimore, I actually ended up writing a story about his neighborhood and the poverty in the neighborhood. And an editor at the Times took notice and said, have you ever considered covering social services? And I had, but I decided to take it on because, in New York City, a lot of people experiencing poverty look like me. Black women had their households with children. I said, hey, I want to make sure that I am writing about them in the fair, dignified way that they deserve. And so, and not just they, we. And so I started on that beat. And then by 2017, I ended up hearing about this Girl Scout troop that had started up in a hotel turned shelter. And I did a story, and it went viral. And, I was immediately approached by people who were saying, hey, are you going to write a book about this? And I'm like, I don't know, am I? And of course, I went to the troop leader, who was really the visionary behind the troop. And, I asked her, do you be willing to let me be your life for a time? And she said, absolutely. I didn't find out until later that she wasn't so sure. She figured she might get rid of me in a month or two. But, 18 months later, I finally had this book that I finished, and it was published last year. It's been wonderful because, I thought that I was going to be writing a story about homelessness through the eyes of Girl Scouts. It was going to be like a bait and switch, like, oh, here are these two Girl Scouts and here's homelessness. So you can really understand what's happening. And yes, the book is about that, but it's also really a story about community and how important it is for everyone to feel like they are a part of something, and that they are also just, contributing to society. I am just amazed by Troop 6000 every day, that they folks at their most vulnerable, they put a lot of themselves into, this troop when, their worries were really about where they were going to live and getting a better job and, paying for a Metro card.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember the story when it came out and when it broke, and really people all around the country making sure to buy their cookies, to support money flooding to their troop. And I know even though I had my own daughter's cookies that we were selling for her troop, I made sure to buy cookies for their troop as well. I mean, it definitely is a story of resilience, is a story of community, and is definitely a story to show the importance, I think, so much so of, kind of creating a circle, around folks to be able to lift them up. I mean, these young women who are, young girls, part of this troop, because of this experience, definitely will have other visions, for their life. Mm-hmm. For sure.
You and I were talking before the broadcast, about exposure, and that is one of the things that Troop 6000 really gives to its members. It's like there's nothing like meeting all these folks, and they're taking trips to MasterCard and seeing how the corporate world works, or they're going to, they're meeting Alvin Ailey dancers. These are just experiences that they can with them and say, yes, I can do that too. And not just that, it's also seeing their parents in leadership roles, and realizing, sometimes, parents are, this is not a good time for them. Obviously, they're living in shelters, but for their children to see them, leading a troop, leading the field trips, leading the meetings. It's important not just to see, the outsiders coming in, but also to see your parents, so elevated.
Yes, for sure. I have to say, as a social worker by training, I so appreciate having someone like you working in the social services and lifting up, the issues and the stories, because, very often they do get kind of washed away as, not everybody's problems, and that everyone doesn't need to understand them, and understand why it's important that we, have programs in place and, put funding in place. And especially now after this year of COVID, what we're seeing with the funds coming out nationally, to try to provide support. But it also strikes me that what a big shift from the work that you were doing in the political campaigns and, covering, some of our amazing leaders, from our presidents to, our now senator, who at the time, was rising to be mayor, of Newark. What was it like being a woman and being, a woman of color working specifically in that area? Because that's, that's a very tough space to be in.
Yes. As you can see too, I am from the South. And so, and it was even a lot smaller when I first started out. And, often I feel that I was underestimated because of my size, because of my gender, and because of my race. But that ended up working to my advantage somewhat. Because I was underestimated, a lot of people would just speak so freely, like, she doesn't know anything. Oh, she's dumb. And then they would quickly realize, okay, wait a minute, what have I gotten myself into? In Newark, I got the nickname Silent Assassin. There was no murder involved, but I guess you could say there were a few takedowns. Yes.
Yeah, I had the experience of working in the South Ward of Newark for years, and I know there was a lot happening, there. So having someone spotlight it, at a certain period of time, definitely in Newark history, is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very powerful. So, now that you've paved the way, as you said, you were underestimated because of these, factors that you've identified. Now that you've paved the way, are you feeling like when you, look around at your counterparts in your work, that you're seeing more people that look like you around than when you started? And are you feeling that there is better support so that we can keep bringing more people, into the work? Because obviously we know very much, and that's hopefully a reckoning that's happening in our country right now, is making sure that we address all the systemic racism and that's happening around us, and to get more Black women and more women of color in key roles and key places in our country, because that's the only way we're really going to get policies that are reflective of what everybody needs, as opposed to just a sect of people, which is where we're still unfortunately stuck.
Yeah. There's still a lot of work to do. I often joke, but there is some seriousness to it, of being at the New York Times when I first arrived in 2014. I really felt that I knew all of the Black people. I was very confident that I knew all of the Black people. If I didn't know by name, I knew by face. And then, Dean Baquet, our editor, and others were, very focused on making sure that the New York Times began to reflect the world it covers. And made great strides. And now I'm happy to say, I don't know who's at the New York Times. Like, I see all these names, like, I don't know who you are. And actually, I'm happy about that. It's great. There's so many more people, but there's still a lot of work to do, not just at the New York Times, but throughout many industries, because it's one thing to recruit and hire. It's another thing to maintain and make sure that people are feeling nurtured, and that people feel that they can be promoted. It's like, I'm here, but there's still the ceiling. And so I think that's something that we all have to work on. But we are in a moment right now that occurred because of the pandemic, and because of the horrible murder of George Floyd. This country is now grappling with its racism. And unfortunately, now we're seeing a backlash. And I hope that I wish racism didn't exist, right? And yeah, I'm kind of speechless.
Yeah. You just shared, which was, I think is one of the things that's important to just elevate too for our viewers, is that, again, it's not just about, hiring more Black people and people of color into organizations, but it's about maintaining them and creating an environment where we can, all feel like there's, equity, inclusivity, to be able to grow and rise into leadership and growth, personally, professionally, in the different spaces. What are some of the, when you think, if you were talking to employers, about, how to create that environment, what are some of the pieces that are important, for you? Obviously, you found a great home, where you are doing some work that you really love, that you are now focused on. What has been able to create that to be a place where you can stay and keep growing and putting out such tremendous work? What's helped that?
Well, I would say that it's not just a matter of having people at the table, but it's
Mm-hmm.
a matter of listening to everyone at the table. Um, uh, Often people will be elevated to positions. And they're like, yes, now I can do the work. I'm so excited. And then they feel like, they're fighting. I'm not necessarily talking about the New York Times. I'm just talking
Right,
about
right.
in general,
Good. Yep.
talking about, you know, uh, my friends and my peers who, have struggled in their various industries to be heard. And so I think the most important thing an employer can do is not just recruit, hire, and promote,
Right.
but to actually listen and to hopefully, implement, adopt, um, adjust accordingly when the folks that you have hired, who you believed in, you're going to have to give them uh, some authority, if you will. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
about a title, it's about giving them the authority.
Yes, yes. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and I just think it's an important piece to remind us all and anyone listening who is in a position that, again, it's not just about, as you said, recruiting and hiring. It's about creating a space for listening and allowing the changes to happen in our cultures and our subcultures. And this is something I've been doing these interviews for over a year now, and it doesn't matter the discipline or the area. This is a sentiment that many people are experiencing. Many members of our BIPOC community, when they get positions, that it's having an environment where they can still flourish once they get there and grow, and feeling that. So I'd love to ask you about the 1619 project. If you could share a little bit about contributing to that, amazing effort, and what that was like for you.
Yeah, I was very honored. Nicole Hannah Jones is not only my colleague, but a very good friend of mine. And, she said that she was going to embark on making sure that the year 1619 was recognized. And I was like, oh, wow, that's wonderful. And, 100% behind you. And then, I was uh, I was so excited to be a part of kind of the brainstorming, a brainstorming session that took place. Really left there write a story about food, because I'm very interested in food too. Um, and then she and an editor approached me about writing about education because I am from Texas, which has had a lot of problems with its textbooks in the past and is one of the biggest purchasers, if not the biggest purchaser of textbooks in the United States. And then Nicole was also familiar with my discovery of an interview that my great grandfather had in with the Federal Writer Project. My great grandfather and my great grandmother, there was a bit of an age gap between them. So he had, in fact, been enslaved as a child and, vividly remembered being taken by wagon from one part of the South to Texas, and remembered the day that, and actually, it was in Texas, so it was June 19th, when everyone got word that they, in fact, were free. So, I was able to share that story, and I was able to interpret his words as I is I viewed them based on my family's memories. What he said to the interviewer wasn't necessarily what he thought. So, yeah.
Wow, how powerful that your family has, that story captured, and so wonderful that you could share it. It's so meaningful, and especially, now in this, country. I mean, we spend so much time, our work at the YWCA is, obviously twofold of eliminating racism and empowering women. And I feel like in almost every school district going on right now, there are these conversations, or that are happening around curriculum that are very disturbing, and we need to be making sure that people are educated properly, and not listening to rhetoric that's obviously racist, and trying to derail what we really need to rectify. In terms of our learning, in our system. Do you have any thoughts on, obviously with your background of in that piece in particular, in terms of the work that you did, on that discussion that's happening nationally right now?
Well, all I can tell you is that the New York Times stands behind the 1619 Project.
Yeah.
And we continue to work with the Pulitzer Center to promote and also help create the curriculum that is around the 1619 Project. I continue to have talks with teachers and educators. I actually have a talk tomorrow on Friday. And we want to continue to spread the word that you have to look at all of the United States history, and all of it isn't perfect. Yeah. George Washington wasn't a perfect person. Abraham Lincoln wasn't a perfect person. I'm getting away from the 1619 Project at this very moment, although it does expand to, present day. But, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, the last speech he gave before he was killed, they were much more provocative than, kumbaya, let's all get along. He certainly wanted that, but he also wanted systemic racism, income inequality, wage disparities addressed. And, we have decided, when I say we, I mean as a society, to whitewash history. And, there has been an awakening, and it's not going to happen, folks. And I hate to tell you this, but your kids have the internet too. So,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And, the YWCA of Northern New Jersey and our national organization as well, obviously we're strong supporters of making sure that, it is not whitewashed, and that, we move forward with making sure that our children grow up understanding, where this country came from, and helping move it forward. But we should not, as I always say, leave it to them to fix. We're here now, and we should do it for them, and continue to be addressing these issues. I'm so grateful that you could join us today and share your experience. And there's still so many pieces. I feel like we could have a part 2 of this discussion because of your tremendous background. But I'm so grateful to you that you could make some time to join us today. To those of you watching, again, we have the comment in the comments for you how you can get a hold of Nikita's book. Also, you can follow on social media and stay connected with her as well. We have the links for you as well. And we just look forward to continuing to watch your career and thank you again for always elevating these important issues and stories. And we look forward to staying connected with you and your work as well. And for our viewers, Share Them Like Now is about elevating the Black women in our community and their stories. You're part of that. You had an opportunity to hear Nikita, a little bit about Nikita today. Please share this broadcast. You can easily do that by sending it in Messenger to someone, putting it on your Facebook page, sending a copy and sending it a text. Share something that you learned about in a conversation that you have. And we appreciate you doing that as well. And we hope that you all stay connected with us next week for a whole new week of YWTV conversations. And please, if you want to join our writers workshop, which we started out talking about, we had the first class last night. You don't have to join all of them. You can just drop in. Sherry Pullum and Rachel Brenner are our co-facilitators. They're Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. for the next 3 weeks. So please, you can sign up, no charge. It's a wonderful opportunity to gain your voice and learn how to share your story. And we also encourage you, if you have a senior in your life who is interested in learning more about home health care, if you're a caregiver having to make some decisions for your family, we have a free program tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Virtual that you can sign on and be part of. And our Girls Leadership Academy that I also mentioned is taking applications now. Sophomores in high school, rising sophomores starting in the fall for 10 months. We introduced them to over 60 women in our community and mentors to learn about different careers and different life experiences to help them learn to navigate their path, and lots of other evidence-based learning opportunities. So you can sign up as well. We have the links for that. So Nikita, thank you again for making the time today. I'm so grateful. And to our viewers, we appreciate you joining us, and we wish everyone a great, healthy day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.